Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode is designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. Hello, gentlemen. I'm recording this episode on Tuesday, December the 1st. You're probably listening to this either on Friday, December the 4th, which is when the episode's being released, or some date after, which means, fellas, we are in the home stretch of the year 2020. A year unlike any other in human history, certainly unlike any other in our lives, right? Now, again, you've heard me say this if you've been a listener of the show, that most people are looking to flip this calendar year as fast as humanly possible and forget about the year 2020. That would be a mistake. We have plenty of days left this year to finish the year strong. And as I've said many times before, all it takes is one moment in time, one moment for your life to shift, for your trajectory to go from downward pointing to upward pointing, to radically upward pointing, hockey stick trajectory. All it takes is one moment. And over these last few days of the year 2020, there are an infinite number of potential moments that you can harness to bring a new energy to the way you finish this year and how you start the year 2021. Because here's the deal. I mean, even if it wasn't an anomaly of a year, most people that I see let themselves go to hell at the end of the calendar year. I certainly was someone like that for most of my life, right? Like back when we were able to hang out with each other in person, there was so many social events, plenty of overeating opportunities, over drinking opportunities, staying out too late opportunities, skipping your healthy habits or workout opportunities. And then we'd magically expect to wake up on January the 1st, feeling refreshed and ready to tackle this new year and make something of ourselves. Guys, it just doesn't work that way. I mean, if you think about it in a microcosm, the way you wake up in the morning, how you feel in the morning, absolutely has to do with how you spent your last few hours the evening before. So if you have finished an entire bottle of wine, if you have eaten an entire tub of Ben & Jerry's, if you've watched 3 episodes of what's a show I'm watching? Well, Breaking Bad's my go-to. And it keeps you up to the wee hours in the morning. Are you going to wake up feeling purpose-driven and refreshed? Chances are, unless you're some alien, the answer is no. So how you finish these last few days of 2020 are absolutely going to affect whether you come out of the starting line of 2021 in a sprint or if you're limping off that starting line. So let's finish this year strong. And once again, I'm going to remind you, if you listen to this episode before December the 16th, to head to greatmanwithin.com and register for the 90-minute workshop that we have on Design Your Future, the year 2021. You'll be able to meet men from all over the world doing inner work. It's a free workshop. And if you're listening to this sometime before January 1st, on the same website, greatmanwithin.com, and I'll link it in the show notes, we are going to be doing a 31-day mentally tougher man challenge. Each day of January, you're going to get an email and or a text from me with a challenge of the day that's either going to be meditation, breath work, cold showers, journaling prompts, exercise in the form of push-ups, and a few other surprises that we have along the way. And this is your opportunity to string together 31 days of wins to start the new year and get a chance to become part of the community of men who are doing this. You can do it on your own, but the guys who are doing it will be in the Great Man Within Facebook group, which I'll also link in the show notes, so that they can share stories, overcome obstacles, celebrate your triumphs, and all the good stuff. Okay, let's get to the topic of the day, which is one that I love talking about, which is this concept that Napoleon Hill introduced in his book, Think and Grow Rich. Are you tired of me talking about this book yet by now, fellas? Because I haven't even begun. Just buckle up and get ready for it. Napoleon Hill is forever going to be a part of this show. So in his book, Think and Grow Rich, he makes a pretty bold statement. And he says, why men seldom succeed before the age of 40. It's a little known chapter, probably in the back third of the book. It's not even a chapter. It's a little section in the back third of the book that when I read it, it resonated to the core of my being because of a big part of my personal history. I'm going to read you the passage here because one of my favorite things to do, one of my favorite things to do when I was a kid was to be read to. So I'm going to read to you guys. Pretend like we're around a campfire, okay? Here's what Napoleon Hill says. Here's why men seldom succeed before the age of 40. I discovered from the analysis of over 25,000 people that men who succeed in an outstanding way seldom do so before the age of 40. And more often, they do not strike their real pace until they are well beyond the age of 50. This fact was so astounding that it prompted me to go into the study of its cause most carefully. This study disclosed the fact that the major reason why the majority of men who succeed do not begin to do so before the age of 40 to 50 is their tendency to dissipate their energies through overindulgence in physical expression of the emotion of sex. The majority of men never learn that the urge of sex has other possibilities, which far transcend in importance that of mere physical expression. The majority of those who make the discovery do so after having wasted many years at a period when the sex energy is at its height prior to the age of 45 to 50. And this is usually followed by noteworthy achievement. The lives of many men up to and sometimes well past the age of 40 reflect a continued dissipation of energies, which could have been more profitably turned into better channels. Their finer and more powerful emotions are sown wildly to the four winds. Out of this habit of the male grew the term, sowing his wild oats. The desire for sexual expression is by far the strongest and most impelling of all human emotions, and for this very reason, this desire, when harnessed and transmuted into action, other than that of physical expression, may raise one to great accomplishment. And that's the end of Napoleon Hill's quote in the book. Now, I ended up reading this during my time in Sex Addicts Anonymous, after my time in Sex Addicts Anonymous, and after I'd actually left a 15-year corporate career to begin this work, right? Purpose-driven work of helping 10 million men get on their path of living their fullest potential. And one of the things that I recognized was during that 4-year period of Sex Addicts Anonymous recovery, there was an 11-month stint where I did not ejaculate. That's not true. There were a few ejaculations. I'll tell you what I mean by that in a moment. But for the most part, for 11 months, no porn, no masturbation, no sex. Okay? Now, for the first time in my entire life, and if you've listened to the show before, I was a guy who used all of my sexual energy to help me numb my emotions, overcome anxiety. Anytime I came up against like some complex project that I couldn't quite figure out, my body would get all tense, and I'd need to release the tension through either masturbation or through sex or through sexting. And so I'd never had a period in my life since I discovered masturbation back at the age of 13 where I'd taken more than a few days off of jerking off or ejaculation. And I now went to a period of 11 months with only a handful of ejaculations, like, wet dreams, and a few unfortunate incidents where I was kissing women and I lost my shit because I hadn't been touched in 11 months. Those are stories for another day. But in that 11-month period, with all of that energy building up inside of me and having nowhere to put it, because in the past, it would have just been, I'd go to my bedroom, I'd jerk off, and then all of that energy would leave my body. And in some respects, it started to feel like a calming agent, a relaxing agent. But without that release, that energy, that life force started to build inside of me, and I needed a place to put it. That's when I started questioning the fact that, I was making great money in the financial services space, but I was completely disconnected from any sense of passion. And the more that I sat in that frustration of that disconnect of wanting more for myself but not having it, and then not having my release valve of jerking off or having sex, it forced me to confront the fact that my life was not what I wanted it to be. And I had to take that energy and put it somewhere. That's when I made the decision to leave a 15-year financially lucrative corporate career behind. And I said, I'm going to be leaving in 2 years. I didn't leave right away. But during those 2 years, I built. I created. I launched a video blog. I launched a written blog, right? I started to sow the seeds of the future elements of my business. I got smarter around who I was serving, how to speak, how to create presentations, how to create keynote speeches. Because when I wasn't dissipating all my life force, I started to become and use that energy to create. This is what Napoleon Hill means when he talks about transmutation of energy. It's just it's a fancy word for alchemizing, which is a fancy word for transformation. It's taking one thing and turning it into another, right? Like turning lemons into lemonade, like, in the metaphorical sense. You're alchemizing the like one form to create something else. And I had no idea for most of my life that was even a possibility. If I had sexual energy coursing through my body, the only natural outlet for it was jerking off, porn, fantasy, sexting, or sex. That's it. I didn't recognize that you could circulate that energy and turn it into and use it for action with respect to your purpose, your business, and other things. Now, where I want to make a clear distinction here, because Napoleon Hill talks about men seldom succeed over the age of 40 because they dissipate their energies in the pursuit of the emotion of sex. What I want to make clear here is my take on it is not so much about the fact that it's a man pursuing sex so much, albeit I have spent an inordinate amount of my life's time and energy, whether it's like courting women or sexting with women or being distracted through the sexual pursuits, for sure. That's an element of it. And loads of time, I shouldn't use the word loads when we're talking about sex. It's always so difficult to talk around like all these double entendres. It's just going to happen. So you can laugh wherever you are at me as I try to stumble through this stuff. So I don't even know what the hell I was talking about anymore. Oh, so I freed up lots of time when I stopped those pursuits. But I think what Napoleon Hill is really talking about here is harnessing that life force of energy inside of us that we so casually dispel into tissues, into condoms, onto our partner's body parts, onto the bed sheets, wherever you pick your poison, right? Instead of maintaining that life force inside of your body. And I want to rely upon two of my teachers in this respect from Eastern philosophies, right? Around, say, some of the Taoist principles that Mantak Chia talks about. So he's one of the teachers, and he's written the book Multi-Orgasmic Man. And then Deida, who I've referenced a number of times, that's helped me in terms of keeping polarity and magnetism in my sex and love life, and also how to use breathing techniques that allow me to circulate the energy, to stay harder, longer, to stave off orgasming too soon. And what Mantak Chia talks about in the Multi-Orgasmic Man is there's a distinction between orgasm and ejaculation. For most of us, including for me, for all of my life, I have not been able to separate the two. Orgasm and ejaculation happen simultaneously. The orgasm is that amazing feeling that we get. The ejaculation is the stuff that comes out of our dicks, right? And what was a big aha for me, and Brian and I talk about this on the show sometimes too, is you can actually separate the two. And I haven't learned how to do this yet. I haven't mastered the art of it, but it's actually an intention for this year, 2021, where through some Kegel exercises, through some contractions, you can actually separate the ejaculation from orgasm, where you can still feel the great feelings of orgasm, but that ejaculation stays in your body, which means you can orgasm and not lose your erection, which means you can do it over and over and over again, like many women can, right? Have multiple orgasms without losing the energy. And this is what I think Napoleon Hill is really talking about, which is when we ejaculate so frequently and we lose that life force, which Mantak Chia in the book, The Multi-Orgasmic Man, says, every time you prepare to ejaculate, your body is preparing you with like your greatest energy because it is intended to create life. So you are drawing from your body's vital life forces. And I'm not here to pretend like I am a doctor. I haven't studied this kind of medicine. So I'm only repeating what I've learned in a very reputable book about the Multi-Orgasmic Man. that when we summon that energy to ejaculate, that our greatest life force is being called, right, to go to war. And then when we ejaculate, that stuff is out of us. It's gone and it's depleting. And many of us experience this, like I have, as a relaxing form of being. But I want to kind of unpack some of the stuff that I've learned from David Deida, in particular in one of his books called The Enlightened Sex Manual, where he talks about how most men have become addicted to ejaculation because he says ejaculation is addictive. Once you start having ejaculations with some habitual frequency, it's hard to stop. And oftentimes when sexual energy is in our bodies, we haven't built the capacity to harness it. We don't know how to circulate it with our breath. And therefore, we feel this urgency to release it. And the only way we can feel relaxed is when we ejaculate, versus training ourselves to have that sexual energy in our bodies and to feel relaxed with it there versus emptying it. Now, the reason why this is so important, again, we're going back to, there's a number of reasons why this is so important, but going back to Napoleon Hill, using that powerful form of energy transmuted to put it towards your life purpose, towards building, towards having bold ideas like me, leaving, like my example of leaving a 15-year corporate career to start this work. I don't know if I'd be here today if I didn't have that 11-month abstinence period without ejaculation. I don't know it. I believe that much in this. And as I have taken periods of time in my life where I've harnessed that sexual energy and I haven't ejaculated, I found that my life is a lot more in technicolor versus gray. And what David Deida says in the Enlightened Sex Manual is he says, ejaculating often is not going to make you feel bad. It's just going to make you feel mediocre. And I've had conversations with other guys in the mastermind about this. And one guy in particular who's like, listen, I ejaculate 5, 6, 7 times a week. It's no big deal. I don't feel like bad. And I'm like, neither do I when I do that. But I do notice that I feel mediocre because I know what it's like when I feel having that energy inside of me for long periods of time, like weeks or months. And I know, guys, if you're as addicted to ejaculation as I was for most of my life, the idea of going even a few days can sound like climbing Mount Everest. It's a scary thing. And on your first few attempts of like abstaining for a period of time, you'll probably feel more like a shook up bottle of Coca-Cola than anything else, unless you learn some of these techniques, these breathing techniques in books like David Deida's The Enlightened Sex Manual. I'll link all these books in the show notes too. Let me read to you some of the passages from the Enlightened Sex Manual that Deida talks about regarding ejaculation. He spends a few chapters on this because it's so important. And here are some of the consequences he outlines of ejaculating too frequently. If you are ejaculating too frequently, the equilibrium will be disturbed and you will feel tired, weak, depressed, unclear, and unmotivated. A man who ejaculates too frequently often finds himself addicted to stimulants such as coffee, cigarettes, or pornography. Even the stress of his career or profession may function something like a stimulant, compensating for his spent internal energy. A too frequent ejaculator might find himself unable to muster the energy to meet creative challenges and cut through the obstructions that arise in a creative life, so he may settle for a rote job, something he can do without really living fully. Whoa, I'm going to pause here and interject. This is huge. I'm going to read this again because this is really only hitting me for the first time as I'm reading this. A too frequent ejaculator may find himself unable to muster the energy to meet creative challenges and cut through the obstructions that arise in a creative life. So instead, he may settle for a rote job, something he can do without really living fully. Fuck. This is exactly the life that I was living before the life I'm living now. The life I'm living now is extremely creative. All of these episodes that you listen to require my greatest creative energy. The keynote presentations that I do, the workshops that I run for the mastermind, the workshops that I run for the Facebook group, every part of my being requires me to be creative. Back when I was at Prudential, after a decade of working there, and I spent 15 total years there, after a decade of working there, I had my stuff down. You know what I mean? Like I could coast for the most part. There were days where things got harder than others. There were certain times where I had presentations to give and I had to, ante up for it. But for the most part, it was a rote job that I didn't really need to summon much of my creative energy at all for. It was easy. And that part became seductive because the money was really good as well. But I knew I wanted something more. And one of the biggest things that I had to relearn when I left corporate was how to flex my creative muscle, because my God, it was atrophied. And a big part of it had to come in sync and lockstep with me learning how to harness my sexual energy and not to spew it out all over the place. Here's one more thing that Deida says. If he has depleted his natural energy through excess ejaculation, he may find that all he can do at the end of a day is sit in front of a TV and zone out. There's another quote here here's another quote that's really powerful. One of the main effects of too frequent ejaculations is a very subtle spiritual dullness, in which the scope of your attention becomes whittled down to the routines of life. Being lost in the plot of your life, its actual routines, does not and cannot truly fulfill you. No matter how good your life seems for the moment, you will also feel like you are missing something unless you are feeling into this moment's true depth. So I think the key part of this is one of the main effects of too frequent ejaculations is a very subtle spiritual dullness. And if you have never taken time off of it, like breaking that ejaculation addiction, you're not even aware of that subtle spiritual dullness. I certainly wasn't. For decades of my life, where I was jerking off 2 to 5 times a day, every day, for 2 decades of my life, I didn't know anything different. There was very little connection that I had to anything bigger than myself, what I would call spiritual energy, right? It was subtle. It was below the radar, and I didn't know anything different until I started to learn how to harness this energy. I started to abstain from ejaculating, or at least, not these extreme 11-month periods of time, but 7 days, 14 days, 30 days at a time. Right now, I'm on about 7 days of no ejaculation. And even today, walking through the streets of New York City, I can find my awareness sharper. My mind is clearer. I feel like I'm in the zone even right now recording with you. And also, this is one of the more beautiful things. There are a couple women who I'm sexually interactive with right now. And when they send me pictures of themselves fully clothed, I can feel it like resonate. It's almost like this explosion of electricity inside of my body, because I can see their beauty on their face, and I can witness some of those subtleties, like their hair and how it falls over their shoulders, or how a pair of workout leggings fit her. I can feel that now. When I'm ejaculating a bunch, I need a lot more to break through my attention, at least with, like in sexually speaking. And also that getting caught up in the routines of your life, when I'm jerking off too much, I get pulled into the small minutia of my everyday, and I miss the bigger picture. I don't think as creatively or as boldly. So guys, I hope that I'm a pretty credible test case for someone who's lived this stuff and who's relied upon the wisdom of some pretty fucking smart people. Napoleon Hill, Deida, Mantak, Chia, right? These are authorities in their spaces. And when I think about how many decades of energy that I spent, before the age of 40, in lesser pursuits than what I am now, I can absolutely attest that I'm a believer that if we are able to harness our sexual energy and to ejaculate less and learn how to circulate that energy and then redirect it towards your purpose, towards working out, towards boldness, towards creativity, that we will all become bigger, bolder, better, more courageous, more impactful men in our lives. So to wrap this up, if you are feeling inspired to take a look at some of your ejaculation habits and may want to put forth a challenge for yourself, whether it's a few days, a week, multiple weeks, an entire month for the rest of the 2020, or 30 or 40 days to start the new year, whatever you're feeling up to, what I would encourage you to do if you've never taken on something like this before is go out and buy the Enlightened Sex Manual or the Multi-Orgasmic Man. Learn some of these breathing techniques to circulate that energy so that you don't feel like that shook up bottle of Coca-Cola like I did for those 11 months, because I didn't have those techniques. Sometimes it was just about pure willpower and discipline. And my God, it wasn't easy, guys. So take my word for it. If you're going to take something like this on, learn the techniques, buy yourself a journal, maybe even like write about the experience. Talk to some of the guys in the Great Man Within Facebook group, because we love discussions like this in there. And one final reminder that if you are looking to finish 2020 strong, head over to thegreatmanwithin.com, register for the workshop on December 16th, Design the Next Year of Your Life, 2021. And also at thegreatmanwithin.com, sign up to join us for the 31-day Mentally Tougher Man Challenge, a new challenge every single day to start the first 31 days of the year around meditation, breath work, cold showers, exercise, journaling, to string together 31 days of wins to start your year strong.